I want to talk about the feeling of dread and powerlessness that you feel when you're in that moment of extreme loss. So it could be a breakup, it could be anything really, and I'm sure that most of you have felt this feeling of like, oh, it's absolute terror. In those initial days, how do you actually deal with that? And when I was thinking about this, because I thought I really wanted to move through my breakup and share with you what went on for me and how I took back my power sort of in a linear fashion. And I went back and remembered what it was like for me, because I left a relationship with my first husband, and I left it really quickly actually. It was almost like one day I woke up and just went, what am I doing here? And I need to leave. This is not where I belong. And essentially it was almost 2 weeks. Now, even though I was the one doing the leaving, and even though I'd grieved the relationship, which is often what women do, is they grieve while they're in the relationship, I still had this feeling of like panic and terror and dread, because I was leaving everything I knew. I was leaving a home. I was leaving everything that I'd built for 36 years. And that feeling of dread would come up in me. And then in my second relationship, after 13 years, that happened to me. And it was really interesting, because even though I didn't regret leaving my partner, I had an appreciation for how it must have landed on him, the suddenness of my departure. And I couldn't really appreciate that until I went through it myself. But I segue. The second time that it actually landed on me, the feeling of terror and dread was still there, but it was much more extreme. The feeling of powerlessness and not being able to see anything into my future, it was absolutely terrifying. And I'm sure that that's what, if any of you have felt lost, the same thing, that feeling of like and it's overwhelming. So how do you actually get through that? And when I was reflecting on this last night and thinking about what would be great to share for people, I want to talk a little bit about emotion, because as it happens, my daughter came home yesterday with an opportunity for me to watch how the emotion that she had was a result of, and this is all emotion is, in its purest form. Emotion is simply a response to a life experience that we're having. We have an experience and we have a feeling response. In its purest form, that's all emotion is. And then what happens is the emotion gets corrupted, because we come in and we start thinking about it and we attach a story to it. Or you could see it as the emotion is a prompt. You know, when it gets really out of control, it's a prompt to get back to just watching the emotion. So if you can start to think about emotion a little bit differently as a response to the life experience you're having. And there was a few things that I did when I started to actually feel so powerless. I knew that I couldn't keep going like this, because my only option was like just totally get off this planet or try and survive somehow. So we're talking about maybe day 1 or day 2 after my partner disconnected from me. And one of the things that I realized, I started to see this wave of emotion that would come through my body, and it was completely overwhelming and filled me with dread and terror. And then I began to notice how as soon as I attached the story to it, it became so much worse. It was like my story of, how could he do that to me? How could they do that to me? That is so unkind. That is so disrespectful. And the mind will do that, because we're trying to understand, we're trying to sort things out. And in a way, maybe we're trying to get rid of the feeling. I'm not sure. There's something in us that maybe thinks that we're going to ease the pain, but actually that increases the pain. So that feeling that you have, and really you can apply this anywhere in your life. The feeling of dread or terror, if it arises, when it arises, because that's life, right? It's probably going to come up somewhere, somehow. just practice sitting back and going, oh, that's okay. This is an emotional response to the life experience I'm having. And then you'll have a thought that comes in and tries to put it into a box, tries to make sense of it. But if you can just try and still those thoughts as much as possible in the interim, it's very, very helpful. And if I can also suggest that your emotion, if you think about, we have an experience and we have a response to that experience, which is like a movement, right? It's like a movement. So wouldn't it make sense to you that if you kept moving, that the response wouldn't be quite as painful? And so when you're in those moments, move. Like, just move. Get out of the spot you're sitting in and move. Walk, yoga, whatever it is you want to do. And it's interesting because I had this opportunity yesterday with my daughter when she came home and she had all this emotion, and I'm just like, you got to move this. This is what's happening. And we did a little bit of yoga and it really helped. But her initial reaction was not to do that. She wanted to just get into bed and roll up in a ball and cry. And hey, I know that place. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you feel that that's what you got to do, go do it. But there's going to be a point where you're like, okay, I need to find option 2 to deal with what I'm feeling. So one of the things you can do is move. And then there was another thing, because there's not much you can do. When you're in that convalescent period, when it's so intense, your job really, in those feelings of terror and dread, your job is simply to be with the feeling and allow it to move through you. And sometimes there's a few days where you just need to allow that to happen because your body is having a response to the experience that you're having. That is a normal part of human behavior. That is the way we work as experiential beings. It's very normal. What we need to learn, I think, as a species is how to actually have that experience without resisting it or shutting it down. So moving, just seeing it for what it is. It's the energy of emotion having a movement through your body. And if your thoughts get too much, and I'm going to talk about obsessive thinking because that really needs to be addressed. But the other thing that I did was, actually there was a couple of things, but what I want to share this time today, when you're having those thoughts, one of the things that really helped me was getting my mind occupied. And I learnt a song that I just repeated over and over and over again. So if you've got a poem or a song or something inspirational, when your mind is in that place, just learn a song or a phrase and just repeat it over and over and over and over again. That gives your mind something to do, and it stops it attaching thoughts and stories to the emotional experience that you're having. Because then you can experience the purity of the emotion, which is there for a reason. It's there to allow you to move through the moment that you're having so that you can move into the next moment. And that's what this is all about. This is all about moving from a moment and experience that no longer serves you. It doesn't serve you, because otherwise you wouldn't be here in this situation, into the next more empowered experience. That's where we want to get to. That's where we can take our power back. That's where we cease feeling so powerless and out of control. Somehow we've got to get from where we are now to there, and the way we get from where we are now to there is by allowing that movement of emotion to work through us. So just see it for what it is. It's just the movement. The emotion is the movement that's going to get us from where we are now to where we want to be, which is a more empowered state. Just standing in the core of who we are and experiencing that. So move with the emotion. This is the bridge. The more you resist it and you tell a story around it, the longer it's going to take you to cross the bridge. And I can actually speak from experience because In my last relationship, the intense feeling, this powerlessness, this dread, this terror, it lasted 3 days, and I was able to shift it from doing all these little things I'm going to share with you over the next couple of days. So I'd love to invite you just to see your emotion as a response to your life experience, as the bridge that's going to get you towards where you want to be. It's going to take you to actually being able to stand in your full power. See it for what it is. Switch off the thinking with a song or a phrase. Be in it and know that the more you can just be in that without attaching the story, the quicker you're going to cross the bridge. Because it's, Marcus Aurelius said that. What stands in your way is the way. What's standing in your way right now might be dread, might be loss, might be absolute freaking terror at what you have to do. And leaving a relationship with my first husband and my kids and my home and everything I had, everything that we built together, that feeling of dread and how am I going to do this? But it was that being able to just go, I've just got to go through it. I've just got to go through it. And accepting that. So I'm sending you lots of love today, and I'm hoping you've enjoyed what I've shared. I'd love your feedback. Have a beautiful day.